Ordinance. Item 6.3 is to consider Ordinance 2013-00087, approving and adopting a budget for fiscal year 2013-14, providing for necessary transfers of funds between accounts and departments if required, appropriating funds for the fiscal year 2013-14 operating budget and capital program of the City of Lubbock, approving the pay plan and positions, establishing civil service classifications and positions, approving all fees, fines, and charges for service, approving inclusion of equipment and property to be purchased as part of the master lease program, authorizing the mayor to appropriate certain funding during a duly declared state of disaster, amending section 22.03.084 of the Code of Ordinance of the City of Lubbock by revising water-based charges as contained therein, amending section 22.03.085 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lubbock by revising water volume rates as contained therein, accepting the budgets for Lubbock Economic Development Alliance, Market Lubbock Inc., Civic Lubbock Inc., Lubbock Emergency Communication District, Vintage Township Public Facilities Corporation, and Meadowbrook Golf Course, providing for publication and providing for a savings clause. Now, in order to kind of try to save some of the confusion we had at the last meeting, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the budget. If we can get a motion to approve the budget in a second, then we can start making motions for amendments. And when we're through with all of the amendments, we can vote on the overriding general motion. Sam, do you have anything to add to that?
No, sir, except that amendments would go too deep.
Yes, too deep only.
And then, yeah, but even after amendments passed, if there's other discussion before you vote, other amendments could take place.
Mr. Hernandez.
I move to approve and adopt item 6.3, that is the budget for fiscal year 2013-14.
I have a motion and a second to approve the budget. At this time, we'll open the dais for discussion and or amendments. Ms. Joy.
I move the adoption of item 6.3 with the following changes to the fiscal year 2013-14 operating budget and capital program as approved on the first reading related to the general fund in Lubbock Power and Light. General fund operating decreased the transfer from Lubbock Power and Light by $262,950, a reduction in the indirect cost allocation for the city manager office, city secretary office, and city attorney office. Decreased the transfer to the CIP by $262,950. General fund capital decreased the appropriation and for the year 2014 pay-as-you-go funding for capital improvement project 91190 City Hall improvements by $262,960. Lubbock Power and Light operating decreased the transfer to general fund for the indirect cost allocation by $262,950.
Okay, and let me make sure you're making just an amendment to the overall motion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I have a motion to amend. Judge, am I right in assuming we need a second on the motion to amend? Yes. The motion, and I'm going to just try to paraphrase it, and it's to move $262,952 of the indirect allocation from LP&L back into LP&L, and to make that money up in the general fund for the City of Lubbock by taking that same amount of funds out of the repairs to City Hall. Is that a fair?
That's correct.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Mr. Mayor, I'll second for purposes of discussion.
I have a motion and a second. Now discussion. Ms. Joy?
Yes. I believe that some of the citizens who are here today were also present when we were talking about the LP&L budget, and we had a discussion about the indirect costs that were being assessed to Lubbock Power and Light. And it came as quite a surprise to some that a portion of the city manager's salary, the city attorney's salary, and the city secretary's salary was being allocated to Lubbock Power and Light. In my opinion, that is a charter violation. We've had people here talking about charter violations today, And in my opinion, that is a charter violation. And so because of that, I do not believe that LP&L can pay those expenses for the City of Lubbock, city manager, city attorney, and city secretary. And so therefore, that is the reason that I'm asking that that be moved out and back into LP&L, and that the general fund be assessed the $262,950 in order to make it correct.
Mr. Medina, could you address the legality or the question of its legal by the charter, please, sir?
Mayor, I think, and I want to clarify, are we saying that the payment from LP&L to the city, that's a violation?
It's the payment of the expenses for personnel of the City of Lubbock employees, in this case, the top 3 employees.
And I would have to ask a question, probably of our financial department. Is LP&L receiving some benefit? You know, in other words, are they paying for something and receiving benefit from it?
Actually, the indirect allocation is for the whole departments, essentially. Basically, the indirect allocation is how we allocate out the cost of the administrative services of the city to all the departments. So essentially, I really can't say, Sam, that would be up to whether, I mean, legal thinks they do work for LP&L, then yes, I'd say you do. But
Well, I guess the answer depends on if they are receiving benefit from the city for something we're doing, and you're otherwise we should be allocating. And if they're receiving benefit, I think it'd be proper. If they're not receiving benefit, then I think that's a totally different story.
we actually use a standardized software to do the indirect allocations, and actually accounting does it, so they could probably speak to it better than I do, but it's the method on how we do allocate out the admin cost of the city.
Okay, well,
Internal departments that do work for everybody.
okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yes, sir.
I thought I heard you say salaries. It's not just salaries. It's part of the operations of the entire city attorney, city manager, and the other division. It's not just salaries.
Cheryl, will you speak to that?
Yes,
What
ma'am.
and you have the exact numbers on what it actually says is that for the city manager, and it just says city manager.
Well, it's at the top of the page. I have a breakdown, and it's central service departments. So it technically is for the department itself, the cost of the whole department, not just the people who run them. So it is technically the cost for the whole department that we distribute out, because we have central departments that actually provide service to all departments in the city. Fiscal policy being one, or accounting being another, and city manager, city council. I mean, all of those are actually distributed out through the indirect cost allocation.
And I understand that, and some of that is for pencils and paper clips and IT and those kinds of things.
But it's the entire cost, which would include personnel, yes, ma'am.
But in the actual budget for LP&L, it shows that the city manager, tell us what the amount is that's attributed to the city manager.
Well, it's the city manager department, though. It's not just the city manager. That was $71,685 for city manager department. City secretary was $105,896. City attorney was $85,379.
And it's my understanding that LP&L had its own attorney. Is that correct?
I would assume so. I have no. I really don't. Can't
Yeah,
answer that.
that would be correct. They did have their own attorney, and I think what we're referring to here is from time to time there's help. From time to time there's things that we meet with the LP&L council that we have to work with them. In fact, recently Mitch has been on loan to them, and I think that's part of the allocation. Now, it would be if it was just city attorney, I would certainly agree that I don't believe I personally do $85,000 worth of work for LP&L. But if it's department-wide, that figure does not come from my department. It comes as y'all have figured it out, and I could not speak to that.
Actually, accounting does it based on the prior
Okay.
year budget, I believe.
Okay.
Well, and I'd like to put and I'll agree with Ms. Joy in one respect that we need to really look at the transfers, and we need to look at them hard. I think we really need to take a relook at streetlights, for example. We can't do it in this budget because I don't think we've got the money to do it, but I think it's something that we need to start after this budget, trying to figure out maybe gradually over a 3 or 4 year period to get these numbers right. We need to look at the franchise fee. This is a case, though, that I'm having a little bit of problem with because the indirect allocation is not a perfect science.
No, sir.
We take these costs of the city and try to spread them out all over different city departments. And LP&L is a little unique and different because of our charter amendment election of 2004. So it's not as black and white and easy to look at as, say, the water department.
Yes, sir.
But I think the point that I would make is that we are charging these similar costs, probably at different percentages, to the water department, to the stormwater department, to the wastewater department.
Yes, sir.
You know, I know one of the allocations that we charge to LP&L is for Human Resources Department, which has come up several times in the last couple of months. And we charge them $54,000 for Human Resources. And I think it'd probably take them $400,000 to $500,000 to replace that service. So, Ms. Joy, while I really support the idea of looking very closely at these transfers and cleaning them up, this is going to be one I may have a little bit more difficult time with.
Well, I agree with you. We do need to look at the transfers because what I hear from the public is they don't understand why the street lights are being paid by fees. And I am also hearing about these transfers and the indirect allocation costs. Now, when we discussed this at the LP&L board, when the prior city manager was there, her response was, well, that's the way we've always done it, and that was done prior to the charter amendment. And that's why I think that we have to look at these very closely, because that charter amendment changed how we operate with LP&L. And at this point in time, I think what the mayor is kind of talking about is we still haven't separated some of those functions, but we certainly can look at those transfers, because even if Mr. Medina meets with their attorney, that's on the city side, not for LP&L, that's for the city side, and that's how he is paid. The LP&L attorney represents LP&L. And so my position is this is an amount that should not be included in the budget, and I will be voting for it.
Any further, Mr. Hernandez?
Well, and the real question, at least in my mind, if I understand the proposal, is what effect did the 2004 charter election have on our ability to allocate some of these indirect costs on over to LP&L? Because if that created a wall, if you will, then I think Councilwoman Joy is absolutely correct, and for the city to be charging LP&L anything on these indirect allocation costs is probably not correct. Regardless of how you came up with that allocation or that indirect cost, regardless of whether you're getting value for them one way or the other, I mean, if it goes contrary to what the citizens voted for in 04, then that's it. But I don't think we can answer that tonight. And in fact, I would think there might be a difference of opinion depending on whether you ask our side of the house or the LP&L side of the house as to exactly what the 04 charter election did or did not do. So although in spirit I agree with Councilwoman Joy, I don't think we can answer it tonight. I don't think it precludes us from revisiting the issue once we get an answer. So for purposes of tonight, I did want to second the motion in order to have the discussion, but I cannot support the motion. And that's also setting aside the personal heartburn I've got that we're now in order to achieve this, we're going to have to impact capital improvement project on our side of the house as well. And so, but that's also a side issue in my mind. So I did it out of a professional courtesy to a colleague, but I won't be able to support this motion.
Any further discussion? All right, the motion is to decrease the transfer from LP&L by $262,950 in reducing the indirect cost allocation, and decreasing the transfer to CIP by $262,950, and then to decrease the appropriation and the pay-as-you-go funding in the CIP for the City of Lubbock, City Hall improvements by $262,960 to offset that, and at the same time decrease the transfer to the general fund for the indirect cost allocation. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Motion fails 6-1. I will entertain another motion or any other discussion. Ms. Gibson.
Mayor, I move to the adoption of item 6.3 with the following change to the fiscal year 2013-2014 proposed operating budget and capital program related to the general fund. Increased expenditures in the general fund by increasing the building inspection cost center budget by $119,000. Increase utilization of net assets in the general fund by $119,000, and increase the number of positions in building inspection by 1 plan checker and 1 inspector for the total of 24 positions, an increase of 2 positions.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion. Ms. Gibson.
Once again, I'm bringing this back. We have builders, we have inspectors paying for permits, paying many costs to the city, and they are just not getting the service that they deserve. I feel like if they actually need more than this, but this is at least a start to help get them the service that they deserve.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Hernandez.
I will say that what eases my pain in relation to this particular budget amendment is the fact that it is an income-producing venture on behalf of the city. Quite frankly, there were a lot of additional positions requested by different departments which went unfilled in this budget. But this does allow us to at least create an income stream to offset the additional cost.
Further discussion. I would like to clarify before we vote that this is simply an amendment.
Yes.
This is not to approve item 6.3 as amended. This is simply an amendment to the main motion that is still on the floor. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. I'll entertain another or any other discussion. Anybody?
Go ahead.
Yes, I move to amend the budget by increasing the funding and appropriation in the fiscal year 2013-14 budget as approved in the first reading as follows. Increase for the year 2014 LP&L revenue bonds by $15 million. Increase the appropriation for the Lubbock Power and Light capital program by $15 million.
Okay, I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion, Ms. Joy.
This is the issue about the smart meters. And for all of you that are here that were not here earlier, we did have a meeting yesterday afternoon, a second meeting, by the way, with a company, the Elster Company. And many of the questions that people had raised about smart meters in terms of opt-out, what would it do to your electric bills, those kinds of things were addressed by the gentleman from Elster quite eloquently and quite specifically. We also had information from the LP&L personnel about the smart meter programs, the opt-out program, all of the issues that people have been asking us questions about. I have heard lots of people come to us and say people are hurting. I agree with that. They are. But I also know that there are provisions in the smart meter plan and program that will help people who are not able to pay their bills and get disconnected and reconnected, and sometimes more than once. Nobody seems to pay any attention to that, although they were here on the rate increase saying people can't pay their bills. Well, there are people out there who do struggle to pay their bills and do get disconnected and do get reconnected. And under the smart meter plan, the $55 disconnect reconnect fee will go down to $10. But I can't seem to get anybody to say that's a good thing. We also lose a lot of electricity because we do have the kind of meters we have now. As they get older, they don't read as well. So some people are getting their electricity, more electricity for less money than somebody else. But nobody seems to care about that. But that's what happens. It does not increase the rates. That was said earlier that it would increase the rates. It doesn't. What it does is it accurately reads your meter. And some of our meters are old and they don't function as well. But nobody seems to care about that. LP&L makes their money by selling electricity to the customers, and all of us should be treated the same. So I want to emphasize that the first year, this budget year that we're talking about, 2013-14, does not affect the budget or the rate increase. The rate increase that's proposed, most of it is generated from the fact that we had a bond election that voted a lot of bonds that were very, very expensive. And we're still paying for them, and we're going to continue to pay for them. So I believe that it's in the best interest of the citizens of Lubbock to have the smart meters. Those people who do not want them can opt out. There's absolutely no reason why they cannot. The data is secured. There were questions that someone could come in and get their data. Well, the data that on your electric right now is already stored in a computer. So that's the purpose, and that's the reason that I'm asking that this be put back in, because I believe that that's in the best interest of the citizens.
Any further discussion? Ms. Gibson.
Although I certainly respect Ms. Joy's position on this, I am in no way against smart meters, and I want to make that very clear. I am, however, opposed to them right now. As of right now, there has been no RFP as of yet, so we don't have any idea of what these are going to cost. What we have is merely an estimate. So this year it could be $15 million in the budget, and next year they're saying approximately $5 million, but it could be more. There's been no feasibility study or a cost analysis done on any of this by the staff. And we've only heard from, or I have only heard from one company. I do trust that the staff at LP&L has heard from other companies. I've just only heard from one, but we still don't know what's out there. That's part of what the RFP will do, is bring in other companies so that we will know what equipment is out there and what is available, so that we could get absolutely the best equipment available for the money. I would also like for the water department to be able to weigh in and give their opinions on what a dual implementation for both water and electrical automated meters would be, what the cost would be, and let's just see what it would be. And so at this time, I'm going to be opposed to adding that back in. I'm still going to stay with my position to that.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hernandez.
There are a number of LP&L board members here and LP&L staff. There have been some questions raised. If I could get someone from the LP&L staff to give us some answers. And as they're coming up, let me say again, I am very much in favor of televising LP&L board meetings, and I wish you all would, because there's been some excellent presentations made to the board that I think the general public would love to see when it's convenient for them, and not at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon when a lot of folks are going to work. Setting that aside, there's been a couple of questions by Mayor Pro Tem about feasibility studies, RFPs, costs. Could you answer some of those questions?
I think I can. We put out an RFP back in 2007 with Linda De Leon's request from a council. We put that out for both water and electric that time. We probably spent a month evaluating that between electric and water, and I think at that time that the result of that was that electric was really feasible, but water probably wasn't feasible at the time on that. Currently, we've probably put out 2 RFIs. We have one that we had 11 vendors actually give pricing information, what their best estimate with that was, and probably the last 7 or 8 years, we've probably met with 7 vendors with LP&L staff. Water staff was in most of those meetings also with Marcia Reed. We've actually had Mark Yearwood with IT in a couple of those meetings to look at the backbone technology to make sure that it was okay with what the city was already using out there with that. So I think we've probably done pretty fair diligence on looking at the vendors out there. I mean, we've got the RFI we just put out. We got, I think, 11 results from that, and probably 6 of those were some of the top vendors in the state to do.
For the public's benefit, what is the difference between an RFI and an RFP?
An RFI is a request for information. You send that out to get information. The RFP is actually when you're going out there for a proposal so that you get actual results from that, what the vendor can do. We typically can take the RFP, RFQ and do some kind of negotiating with it since it's not based on low bid. So,
well, how often do you go out for an RFP if you don't have a funding source identified?
Well, I think realistically, I'm not sure that you should do that. I think when we did it the first time, it was under the request of a council person, and we did have some source. We just didn't have the funding to purchase that. You know, the cost of the meters at the time. I think that if you're really going to put out an RFP, you should have some kind of funding to support that.
Now, let me ask you, Councilwoman Joy mentioned cost savings associated with AMRs, especially in terms of disconnect and reconnect fees. What exactly are we talking about there?
Well, we actually relooked at information because we're able to get August numbers for disconnects right now. Currently, we're averaging about 3,459 disconnects per month. That's for 11 months. We still have a month to go for this current fiscal year, for the budget year. So that's a total of 38,000 disconnects. Out of those 38,000, using last year's numbers, about 17,000 of those disconnects were customers that have been disconnected more than one time. So what we propose to do is to reduce that fee. Currently it's $55 for business hours and $87 for after business hours on those disconnects, is to reduce those fees down to $10 anytime, whether it's night or day, because the distribution office has dispatchers that work 24 hours a day over there, and they can actually do those reconnects and disconnects automatically from there. So it severely decreases the cost of that to the ratepayers out there that are getting cut off.
Well, just to be clear, how much does it cost the customer when they're disconnected?
Currently, we charge them $55 during business hours and $87 for after business hours. And
to reconnect?
That's included in that.
So both disconnect and reconnect are included in the $55 or $87
Correct.
charge. Now, George Carpenter, who's an LP&L board member, made mention yesterday, and I think previously too, that the consumer, not LP&L, but the consumer would save a total of about $2 million collectively if in fact you were able to lower the disconnect reconnect fee from your current fee structure down to $10.
That's correct.
However, it's been mentioned that that's based on old data. And I want to make sure that we understand the true savings to the consumer, not to LP&L, but to the person who's being disconnected, then reconnected. You made mention that for August you had approximately 3,400 folks who were disconnected.
No, that's the average for the year is about 3,400. I think we had about 5,000 people in August that got disconnected.
Thank you for the correction.
Actually, 4,600.
4,600 in August. 3,400 is an average, a
Yes.
yearly average. And I think you made mention that on a yearly basis, you have about 38,000
For 11 months.
for 11 months. Are you seeing that trend go down?
No, sir.
Okay, now I think, and this is where I'll challenge you. I think there was a presentation made to the board, and the council happened to be there, by, one of your all staffers, Dana Box, who I believe showed a slight decrease. I'm trying to remember if my memory is accurate on that or not.
My thoughts on that is I know that she did a presentation on the $30 cost for payment arrangements. When they extended that out and removed that $30 cost for payment arrangements, I think our payment arrangements increased from, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, up from 2,000 or 3,000 to about 9,000.
Okay. So I might be confusing the payment plan numbers as opposed to the disconnect, reconnect. Ms. Box is here. Maybe she can help us
answer.
both out.
We've got a graph, the disconnect reconnects, and it fluctuates by month, and some months are lower than others, but she can definitely come up and help out with what she discussed.
The question is, Ms. Box, whether or not the disconnect, reconnect numbers on a monthly basis have been declining or not.
Over a period of time, yes, because we've been doing more payment arrangements. So the volume of payment arrangements have gone up, which has caused a decrease in the disconnects. But the numbers that he's quoting are for the last fiscal year. So while those numbers are down over previous fiscal years, they're still there. I mean, we're still generating a number of disconnects.
So, and then the LP&L board put a 90-day moratorium on the payment arrangement fee?
Yes, sir.
So if we implemented smart meters, the consumer would not only benefit in terms of not having to pay a fee on entering into a payment arrangement, but also on the disconnect, reconnect fee if they, for some reason, didn't qualify for the payment arrangement or some other reason couldn't get into a payment arrangement.
Okay. Councilman Hernandez, I don't believe that would occur because the moratorium is only good until November the 8th. And so the smart meters, based on my understanding of meetings I've been in, are looking at a year to 2 years out. Now, things I'm sure could be looked at as we move along because there's prepaid that goes with AMI where people can actually control their expenditures and prepay. And I don't think that's been brought up a lot, but it is there and it is part of that whole advanced metering information. So that would certainly be something we'd want to look at because if you can prepay and you can control that, you're not going to be calling us for a payment arrangement.
I appreciate that clarification because I guess what we're saying is the number of people that enter into payment arrangement plans. Well, now let me put it correctly. The number of people that get disconnected, thereby having to be reconnected, is a function of whether or not they can enter into a payment arrangement plan.
If they are disconnected, it does affect whether they can enter into a payment arrangement plan in the future. That is correct.
So as if you get rid of the waiver of the fee, then do you suspect that the number of people getting disconnected and reconnected will jump back up?
If we waive the fee completely,
Oh, no. If you get rid of the waiver of the fee.
we go back to charging the fee on a monthly,
Yeah.
on a payment arrangement fee.
Well, let me clarify. This is very confusing, so I'm confusing myself. So let me clarify it.
Okay.
You got rid of the payment arrangement fee. So as a result, you've gotten more people entering into payment arrangement.
Yes, sir.
which means that that has impacted positively the number of people getting disconnected and reconnected.
That's correct.
My question is, do you think that if you reinstitute the payment arrangement fee, the number of people getting disconnected and reconnected will rise back up?
Possibly. Let me tell you what's happening. The trend is most of the people are using our integrated voice response, as I've mentioned, I think, numerous occasions. And so they're using that 24/7. So they're not paying that fee anyway. That is the bulk of the customers that are making payment arrangement fees. What's happened with the moratorium on the fee is where we were running around 700 on average per month that were making payment arrangement fees with the CSRs, in August we saw that number jump to 3,400. So we bumped the number of calls into our call system, which of course delays customers, talking to reps, but we also, you see that's where that $30 fee came into play. The call center took more calls, and so disconnects did go down.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. I understand that. And I don't want to get off on that tangent too much. Let's get back to the benefit to the consumer as a result of having smart meters
Okay.
and a disconnect-reconnect fee.
May I clarify something? There isn't a disconnect-reconnect fee. We disconnect at no charge. The fee is to reconnect the service because we're rolling the truck twice. And the actual cost of that currently is $60, and we're charging $55 on business hours. After hours, that dollar amount changes, and I can't recall exactly what the cost is, but our fee is still less than what our actual costs are.
Right. I think it was mentioned that the cost is $87, but...
That's the cost we charge.
That's the cost we charge.
Right. Getting back to it, would consumers benefit or not? This is bottom line. How much seems to be in question, but would the consumer benefit by smart meters in terms of having their services disconnected then reconnected?
Yes, sir. There's some other benefits to the consumer as well, if you'd be interested in hearing those.
I would be very interested in hearing.
We have a tremendous number of high bill complaints, and in today's environment, what happens is the customer calls in, we issue an order, we roll a truck, we reread the meter, we send a letter, we write a credit, we don't write a credit. All of that goes away because when the call comes in, the rep can read the meter immediately. So you get some efficiency there. The customer doesn't have to wait with a paper trail. They get immediate notification of what that meter, because we can ding that meter right then and get the read. So
What
there's
other benefits are there?
Well, that's the primary one that I was thinking of. But if you're calling in, you've got an immediate response. So you don't have to call back, or if you don't get the letter in the mail, or there's any number of things.
Well, let me ask you about this other benefit that I've heard of. I don't know if we could actually implement it here locally. That purchasing electricity could be very much like purchasing airtime or minute time on a cell phone. That you could actually pay for the amount that you're going to use and have it run out if you want to have it run out. But it's kind of like a parking meter. You just put in enough to get you by sometimes. Is that an option available to the consumer?
Prepaid.
Yes, it's prepaid. And yes, it is available. And I'm not involved in the RFP process. I imagine Dale could address that better than I can, but that's part of the meter data management system, and so there's some benefits there.
And Dale, would you like to add anything on that?
Well, I'll add that that is very possible with that prepaid. There's some organizations that's already currently using that. It's matter of fact, when I've talked to some of them that's using it, they said not only is it the people that really can't afford electricity and they can pay like $20 a week or $25 a week or whatever they can, that people are using it for their kids, and people that can very well afford to pay their electricity bills are using that.
Let's kind of cut to the chase. All these benefits of smart meters, who are they benefiting the most?
The consumer.
Are they benefiting the person who pays their bills and can pay their bills, or what segment of society are we really talking about benefiting here?
Well, mainly on the disconnects, it's going to help out the people that really can't afford to pay their bill. They're going out and borrowing money from their relatives or whatever, and they're paying their bill, and they've got disconnected. And most of these customers, I would guess, since they're working and work odd hours, are probably getting disconnected, reconnected after hours and paying the $87. So it's people that really can't afford to pay their bill, and we're tacking on another $55 or $87 on their bill when they pay it.
May I have one more?
Yes, you can.
There's one more thing that I'd like to add that I didn't think of just a moment ago. Right now, we read by cycle. So depending upon geographically where you live, your bill's due 21 days from when we read it. So for some people, and this is part of the payment arrangement problem, they need 5 days, they need 10 days, they need whatever. Automated meter reading does provide the ability for you to pick your due date. And for a lot of people, that would be extremely beneficial.
Dr. Zhang?
Yes, may I add a little more? Actually, it's more than just $87. Because when the people being disconnected, they also damage their credit being damaged. Suddenly, the deposit come in. So there's a requirement, $135 deposit. So plus 87, plus whatever the bill they have, could be potentially summertime $450, $500. So all this added together, they have to pay it in that time. Okay. That's the fundamental problem we have today. I believe that's really, really horrible situation between us and between the LPL and the customer. This can change that picture. From the prepay we talk about, people can manage their finance directly, and also they will have the information to manage that too. For example, right now we only read it once a month, so all information we have is already happened. The new one we can do, if you like to, you can read every 15 seconds. You can read every day. So you can have that information, give that customer, and then that will enable us to have a prepaid program. And particularly the cost saving for the customer. I think fundamentally you ask us a question, there's three benefits I see directly. Number one is the customer have a difficulty to pay their bill. That's the significant saving to them. You can relieve them today. You know, as soon as we have this program in, we have a tariff change, and we can look in the cost. Their savings from 87. A lot of people do pay not 55, they pay 87 because they went home after 5, they find out what's the cost. What happened, they call us. That's after hour, is $87 charge. Our cost is $92 right now. So we have to figure out a way how to save that, how to cut our costs, then shift that saving to our customer. Number one, I think that's the number. The second part is the flexibility. I think we are looking for not only just for the people who have a difficulty. I think you're looking for conservation. People want to know more about what happened to their meter, how much they use. They currently don't have that flexibility, don't have that information. And also at the same time, we're looking for to manage the information. For example, if we have a major outage, we have a storm comes through this town. Suddenly, we depend on customer call us. What happened in a couple months ago when we have a major storm outage, that's the test proof one more time. We need the system, improve the service. That's definitely demanding from our customer. How do we can improve our service? That's the second largest benefit. The third part.
Let me stop you on that benefit. Yes. And so that the public understands, we had a major event June of this year.
Yes.
Where, give me the number of people that were.
It's more than 27,000 customers lost their electricity. Take us more than 4.5-5 days.
And I appreciate the outage data that you're putting up. 27,000 customers affected as a result of that major event, weather event. Under currently structured right now with the old meters that you're using, people have to call in before you're aware that they're out, correct?
Correct.
And as opposed to AMRs, you automatically know because that AMR reports to you if they're receiving electricity or not.
Instantly, yes.
So that gets rid of all of those phone calls.
Correct.
And it actually speeds up your response time because you know immediately that 27,000 customers are without electricity, and you know where.
Exactly. We not only know where, the system also can predict what it caused it. You know, right now what happened is we have to send out a serviceman in the middle of the night in the storm and try to figure out what's wrong first. That's usually sometimes take half your time before you can even fix it.
Well, and if I remember your presentation to the board previously, your response time could have been cut as a result of the June weather event by at least 24 hours, if not more.
Correct. But if any major smaller scale thing, they told me, you know, we've been studying that, a lot of time you may cut as a half.
Now, I interrupted you. You were on your second point. What is the third advantage?
The third one is we looking for is a cost saving to, if this project can self-support, pay off by itself. So I believe that's the business decision we should make. All customers will be benefit directly.
Well, and I won't get into that because I'm strictly, and I understand, the argument was made by one of your board members yesterday, and it's a valid argument, but it's a much more difficult argument to understand in my book. If it benefits LP&L in terms of efficiency and cost, then ultimately it'll benefit the consumer. That was the argument. And I stated my position yesterday. Most people don't look at it that way. They want to know, how is it going to benefit me directly? And when they have those disconnect, reconnect fees, they see that as a direct benefit as opposed to an indirect benefit in organizational efficiency.
Councilman, if you don't mind, I restate some statement about the reconnect, disconnect. I got a number before. 17,000 customer has been disconnect average a year. That they average 4 times. So it's not, I'm talking about the population, you talk about 65,000 the people in this town impacted by this way. If we talk about a relationship, talk about between those customers and LPL, I cannot explain, you know, that's a terrible relationship.
I've got 3 more questions. Based on what you've just said, the person who gets disconnected an average of 4 times a year?
Yes.
And if
Correct.
they're paying $87
Yes.
to get reconnected,
Correct.
they're spending $348 a year more for just getting reconnected.
Correct.
If we had AMRs, instead of $348 a year, they would be paying $40 a year.
Correct.
Now, the second question is, the issue of water meters has been raised, and that it would be a much better approach to take a look at implementing the system when, on our side, on the water side, we're ready to take that leap, both financially and just from a practical perspective. Okay? If you implement on your side AMRs, does that preclude tagging on water meters in a future date?
It does not.
Okay.
The technology we'll use with the backbone will support the water meters.
So basically, you would have a phase 1 and then possibly a phase 2 attaching water meters in the future.
We would hope that water would choose to do this after we get the system up and running, yes.
I will tell you, I think it's important to know, for the public to know why I voted against it and why now I'm supporting it. I asked you a question, and I think I misunderstood. In fact, I know I misunderstood. The question last time was, if we delay implementing smart meters this budget cycle, will that affect LP&L's ability to plan for the future in terms of future generation And your answer was no, it would not affect it, because you could delay the implementation of smart meters for a year and still continue your planning for future generation. But that has nothing to do with whether or not I'm willing to support implementing smart meters today for the benefit of my constituents. That's a planning, for planning purposes, long-term planning purposes. If we the quicker we put in smart meters, the quicker my constituents will be able to take advantage of the savings.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important for the public to know why I've rethought my position, and I do apologize to you for misunderstanding or misinterpreting your answer.
Anybody else? Mr. Burrow.
Just a couple of comments. One of the things, I really would like to support this. I would like to see us doing some more education over the next year. My position is more along the line with Mayor Pro Tem. I'm not sure this is the best time for us in light of some of the things that have happened. Now, I will say, it's interesting, Ms. Pageant, you mentioned San Marcos, your son being forced to have a smart meter at San Marcos. If you go on the Public Utility Commission for the state of Texas, I haven't looked the last couple of weeks, it may have changed a little bit, but among the investor-owned, the municipal-owned, and the co-ops, San Marcos has the lowest rates in the state. I don't know if that's a connection or not. We hear so much about South Plains Electric Co-op. They have the smart meters. Everybody talks about how much less their electricity is than ours. So I really want to support this. But I want you on the LP&L board, or on the staff, I want you to educate the public. Go to the civic organizations. Every time you can, get out and explain the benefits. And I'd like to see a study done by the Institute of Environmental and Human Health, part of Texas Tech, to come in with their evaluation, because they are us. They live here with us. And I'd like to see them do an evaluation of the smart meter about potential health risk, so that we can either say, you know what, there's more danger here than we thought, or there's less danger than we thought. I know the American Cancer Society had a study yesterday, but I'd like to see our own folks here do that. So as much as I want to support this, I think that we need to do a little more time to study this and do a better job of educating the public. And I'd like to have the people telling us, we've got to have these smart meters, get them for us. That's what I'd like to see happening a year from now.
Mr. Geralt, just to kind of let you know, the APPA has done a pretty good study on smart meters, and so does Public Utility Commission of Texas. Just came out with a report about 4 or 5 months ago stating that they didn't find any harmful effects. They did a pretty extensive report on that because of all of the people in Texas saying that they thought there was health risks on that. You know, the American Cancer Society just came out, I don't think you were in there yesterday, they said that they couldn't find anything that would cause that. And you know, we've been doing meetings, I mean, we've been talking about this, as Ms. Paget says, she's talked to me probably, I don't know, 10 or 15 times already. I mean, we've done what we could public forums. I don't think getting out in the public in a town hall meeting, you're going to get 20 people there. I don't think you're going to reach the kind of people that you're talking about contacting with this. I think that you'll find, and this is my opinion only, and as Karen knows, it might stink sometimes, but I think you'll find that most people out of the 103,000 customers that we have are not against smart meters. I mean, if you look at statistics, you're going to have several, you know, it's a percentage, and it's usually, in our case, probably going to be 30 to 50 customers that just absolutely don't want it. That's why they have an opt-out program. They're just totally against it. You know, and it doesn't make any difference what you do with that. You can meet every day for 10 years. You will never convince those people that they need a smart meter. I mean,
Well, my suggestion was not in the town hall meetings, but in the civic organizations, the Lions Club, the Rotary Club, any place where you can have a public gathering of citizens where there are going to be several people there. That's what I'm suggesting.
yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Mr. Klein.
I think, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Stevens, Dell, if I may, let me go through a few things, and I'll be fairly quick about it because I think you know where I'm at.
Do I need to sit down and wait for
No,
this?
because I'm going to ask you some questions, so it's probably easier if you're standing. Mr. Hernandez and I have said in the past you ought to do televised meetings. To his credit, he even brought that forward. At the time I said, because the board was saying no, that needs to be their decision, but that ought to be considered. I think you're seeing from Ms. Pageant's comments earlier and what other council members are saying, it's illustrative as to why that should have already been done. And I hope that the board will choose to do it. Because if you have meetings, it's why I came forward with evening meetings. People work for a living at 3 o'clock unless you're retired or you have some sort of special latitude with the job or a lack of, you ain't going to be there. So if you don't do evening meetings, and I can understand that that may be difficult for board members, you ought to really get on the stick with the TV being the vehicle for people to watch this. Because, yeah, at a town hall, you have a smaller gathering, and if you can do that as a televised discussion, I think that's the key. So I'll go through a couple quick things. We've had a pretty good discussion as to the product. Let's talk about the process, because clearly there are arguments for smart meter. There are some concerns as well, but when you have that process in which you discuss the issue, you often address those concerns, or at least we are more accountable for, or more transparent, accessible to the people we work for. So let me ask you this. Which is a better scenario? We have a discussion, then we make a decision, or we make a decision and then we have a discussion. Which do you think is better?
Well, if you just put it that way, you should have a discussion, make a decision, but we've been discussing it for a year now, so.
But the concern isn't that the board has been discussing it for a year now. The concern is why we're not discussing it in an open venue that the public at large can be accessible to. So I know the board has been looking at it, but I don't really say this as a criticism. It may come off that way. It's not my intent. But if we, well over a year ago, when I was asking let's have a public discussion, we might be at a different point today. I think you need about 12 months to have that discussion, and you either mitigate those concerns, or at least if you don't resolve them, you address them. And I think that's about consent and legitimacy and trust in the process, trust in the elected and appointed officials acting on behalf of our peer group. It's not like time isn't on our side. Smart meters, will they get better or get worse in a year? What's your prediction?
I think they'll stay the same. I think the technology is about like computers, it's reached its peak. I think that the only thing you'll find is they might change out your chip or something like a microprocessor that might make it a little bit faster, but that's kind of irrelevant when you're talking about smart meters because you're not doing any powerful computing with it. So. Okay,
but there's a good chance it might get smarter, cheaper, better, and though we don't know what the price is, and you do need a funding source to do an RFP, presumably they'll get cheaper, like a VCR or anything else with time, not more expensive. Again, I think time is on our side. I'll end with this. Again, I think it's about the discourse first and foremost, but there are alternatives to addressing some of what we've had in problems with payment approach, etc. I think Councilman Hernandez did a great job, if not an exhaustive one, discussing on the possibilities of pushing out further that $30 fee. And that's something, as we spoke with the chairman at the last quarterly report, that we're going to have a chance to look at, and they have a chance to consider if that's it. But there are other alternatives. One of the biggest reasons that we've had, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, a reduction in some of the disconnects and an increase in payment arrangements is not just simply the $30 fee, but the fact that we're working with people based on payment dates that coincide with their paycheck, correct?
I think you've reduced payment arrangements some. I don't think it's been significant. I mean, when you're still averaging almost 4,000 payment arrangements a month, I think that's pretty severe. And to kind of your remark about technology,
yeah.
I mean, you talk about VCRs. I don't think many people in this room use VCRs anymore. That's why they got cheap. They're all on DVD players or something like that. And that's what you don't want to happen with technology. You want to be buying the end of technology and find out that you bought it and 10 years later it's not any good anymore. I mean, and we started that and we started looking at it about 15 years ago when they came out with broadband over power line. You know, we seriously looked at that and then we thought, well, that technology is not quite what we want, so we kind of abandoned that and kept, you know, looking into it till we finally figured out that the technology that there is now is pretty stable. So,
well, Dell, I would just say this. And first, let me say, sincerely, you've got a servant's heart for the public. I appreciate the work you're doing, and I think there's some arguments for smart meters. For me, first and foremost, it's about the process. I will say, as far as your point about technology changing, again, time is on our side. Having a thorough, if not exhaustive, approach, as well as public discussion on this, adds to the value. It better improves confidence and trust, and probably gets a better dividend for the taxpayer, the ratepayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to be as long-winded as my two colleagues. Thank you so much. But I have no problem with smart meters at all, and I know technology, it's going to come. And the thing that I was discussing the last council meeting, I believe, Bill, I believe we talked about it, and we talked about the time factor. And just for me, I have no problem with them. I know they're going to come. I like smart meters. I like technology. And so, but right now, for me, and I can't speak for my colleagues, I never would try to do that. For me, I don't think it's my time to, for me, I think it should be put off just for a while, so everybody would know exactly what I know. And I want to commend you guys for really bringing those experts in and giving us the information about smart meters, because I knew a little about them and I didn't know what I know now. So, but right now, I'm having a little problem with implementing in this budget right now. So I hope no one take that as a slap in the face against the board or the administration of LPNL, because it's not. I think you're doing a fabulous job, both board and LPNL.
Anybody else? I'll wrap it up, and mine will be just comments. I don't have any questions, Dale, but I appreciate it. I don't think there'd be any argument for me to state I've been the most critical member of this council of LPNL. I've criticized customer service, I've criticized management, I've criticized decisions. I think this is a step in the right direction. I think advanced metering technology helps solve some of our customer service problems. I think it answers some of the complaints that I have had towards you, Dr. Zing, about some things that aren't being done at LPNL. I understand they're controversial. I understand it's very political. But I truly believe that analyzing it strictly as a business decision, that it's the best decision for LPNL, for the City of Lubbock, and for our ratepayers. And I say that for a couple of reasons. I sat on this board, on the LPNL board, for over a year before I was mayor. We were studying 2.5 years ago. I understand there are people that have concerns, health concerns and privacy concerns, and safety concerns, I think, are the three issues that I've heard: fire, health, and privacy. I think the fact that there's an opt-out addresses the majority of those. I also think that the newer technology and the information that I've been able to see allays a lot of my concerns. I'm going to vote for it tonight, and I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I think we need to make clear that the charter is clear, and we don't have absolute authority to tell you as a board to not implement advanced metering technology. We can cut this out of your budget, but I think it's important to know that it is an attempt, and as much as I want to attempt sometimes to cross the line and micromanage your business, I think this may be an attempt to cross that line the charter lays out. Because I think the bottom line is, if this isn't funded in your capital improvement plan, with the money you're going to have next year, I think you could cash fund it if you decided to. Now, I will tell you, I've got faith in this board, and I've got faith in LPNL that you won't do that. But I think bottom line that is an option y'all have. I will vote for this tonight. I do understand the people on the dais that have expressed their opposition to it, and you know, that's why we have horse races. Any other discussion on this amendment? All right, all in favor. Now the motion is to put the $15 million back into the CIP budget for LPNL. Motion really has nothing to do with smart meters over there. Everybody here knows this is the money allocated for that technology. All in favor of putting that money back in the budget, signify aye.
Aye.
Okay, get a show of hands, please. All right, all opposed? All right, motion fails 4-3. At this time, we are going to recess for 10 minutes. The motion on the floor is to approve the budget with 2 amendments tonight. It's the budget that we just went through the presentation with the first amendment.
Mayor, if I may, there's 3 amendments.
There's 3. This one, and this one.
All right, I've got the one for adding 2 positions to building inspection. It's $119,000 and they're taking it out of net assets. We've got the one for $100,000 for fire remediation that comes out of net assets of the general fund. And then we've got the city attorney, an additional $86,000 for the city attorney's budget that will be offset out of sales tax. So that is what we will be voting on this evening. Understand that if you're voting for this budget, you're also voting for a tax increase to go along with it. That is part of the budget. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Aye. Motion carries 4-3. For the record, with the nays, please indicate by hand. Okay.